A huge but sparsely populated country. A resource-based economy. Tons of immigrants. Heavily dependent on China. Sounds like I'm talking about the United States, but I'm not. Starting in 1992, this country's economy grew continuously for 28 years without interruption. Its population increased by more than 50%, while people's incomes nearly tripled. Where do things like that happen? In Australia. First of all, what is Australia? It's a massive country continent. And in terms of size, it can be compared to the United States. But only in size. Because Australia has about 13 times fewer people. About 65% of Australia's exports are iron ore, coal, gold, gas, aluminum, and a little oil. But unlike many resource economies, Australians also learned how to sell education, services, and tourism. At some point, they simply opened themselves to the outside world. What does that mean? Remember, Dubai once had almost nothing, no infrastructure, no tourism industry. But it had leaders who understood their geographic advantage and decided to build wealth from scratch. In other words, they invited foreigners with lots of free capital. Today, we call them investors. China in the 1980s also didn't have much infrastructure or foreign investment. Sure, it had 1 billion cheap workers, but the economy wasn't focused on the right things. Everything only started moving once the country opened up to foreign capital. None of these successes happened by accident. Every successful country studies others and borrows the best ideas. For example, Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping traveled to Singapore in 1978 before launching his reforms to understand how such a small nation had built such an advanced and profitable economy. Sheikh Rashid bin Zayed Al Maktoum toured Europe and consulted British ministers before reforming Dubai. In the 1970s and 1980s, Australia looked something like the movie Mad Max, which, by the way, was filmed in Australia. Everything was stagnating. The economy felt stuck. Why? Because the government constantly protected local businesses from foreign competition. Foreign investors saw the situation and had little interest in bringing money into the country. Some people might say, well, that's good, protect domestic industry. The problem was that local companies didn't actually thrive under this protection. Competition was weak, production declined, labor productivity fell, and the country spent decades trapped in economic stagnation. But eventually, Australia decided to tear down the trade barriers that supposedly protected local businesses, but in reality, only limited competition. At the same time, the Australian dollar was allowed to float freely. That was the key turning point. The country told the world, we're open, come in. The rules will be fair. And foreign investors came with money. The population grew, and almost half of private businesses eventually became foreign-owned. Overseas investors also bought up roughly a third of Australian corporate shares. Why were Australians willing to take such a risk? Singapore offers an interesting example. When Singapore was beginning its reforms, officials asked managers at Mercedes-Benz how long they should continue protecting a local car assembly plant with tariffs. The answer was brutally honest. If you keep protecting it, then forever. After that, Lee Kuan Yew simply removed the tariffs and allowed the uncompetitive factory to disappear. Both Singapore and Australia followed the same principle. Competitive industries should survive on their own, while inefficient ones should leave the market. By the way, Australia is extremely tough on illegal immigration, even though the country itself is essentially built by immigrants. More than 500 nationalities live there, while Indigenous Australians make up only about 2.5% of the population. And here lies the second key to Australia's economic success: attracting the right immigrants, educated, skilled, and economically useful people. Ironically, Australia originally began as a penal colony. The British sent convicts and political prisoners there after losing the American colonies and no longer being able to deport people to North America. But today, completely different people move to Australia, either wealthy and highly educated professionals or students seeking a good education. Students choose Australia because studying there is often 30–40% cheaper than in Europe or the United States, and many of them stay permanently after graduation. Chinese and Indian students now make up almost half of all foreign students in Australia. Of course, the Australian miracle would never have happened without natural resources. That's the third key to its success. This combination, openness to the world, fair rules for everyone, willingness to sell resources while investing profits back into people and development, is what created the Australian economic miracle.